Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, and should we see what's going on on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today? And you might be like, hey Dear Darling, do you still have off-a-book musical We Don't Object to Fear, whatever songs stuck in your head? Because you were talking about them a lot in the previous episodes that you recorded, which actually, now I think about it, you probably wouldn't say that because you haven't seen the next two episodes yet. And the answer is yes. Basically, tomorrow and the day after, you're going to have two pre-recorded Happy Home Paradise episodes, which we haven't had for a while. And I think I was singing like the off-a-book musical songs for like most of it because it's so in my head. I can't get it out. I remember. Anyway, hello there, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow at 6:10 p.m. on Friday, July 28th, 2023. What should we talk about today except for the I remember? You know. Well, I was going to be like, we could talk about To Kill a Mockingbird, because I did read it for my English lit, not even GCSEs, it was pre-GCSEs, I think, so probably it was like year 7 or 8. The thing is, I don't remember it that well, but it was a really good book from what I remember. Like, genuinely one of the books actually super, like, I mean, saying enjoyed is probably like the wrong word to use, because enjoyed, you know, I suppose evokes like a sense of happiness around it. When really, you know, it's quite a tragic. Well, it's sort of like, from my understanding of it, you know, from my interpretation from when I read it, it was like it's a tragic tale with a light at the end of a tunnel of things possibly changing for the better or something. I don't remember it that well, but anyway, To Kill a Mockingbird. I guess spoilers for To Kill a Mockingbird if you are worried about that too much. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll sort of talk about To Kill a Mockingbird as best as I can remember it, which is not that well. But it follows like Gem and Scout, who are two children. I don't remember which one it follows. I think it follows. I don't even remember who's who, to be honest. I know they're brother and sister, but I don't remember who's who. To be perfectly honest, and who it even follows. But it mainly follows them and their sort of like childhood. It's not really childhood adventures per se, but it's sort of like through the lens of a child, I suppose. And it kind of follows the story. Really, it kind of feels more like Atticus Finch and Boo Radley's story, isn't it? Okay, so Atticus Finch, as I remember it. This is probably good for like sort of prosperity if you want to be like, oh, how do I actually remember To Kill a Mockingbird? And my English teacher's probably right now, you know, just being like, I've got a weird sensation of like ominous, forbearing, looming sensation. Just an atrocious way to describe that. But it follows basically the court trial case of Atticus Finch, who is a defendant lawyer for a black man called Boo Radley, who I think he was like a farmhand or something. I don't remember, but he was basically being accused of quite a serious crime against. I don't remember what the woman's called, but she's, you know, let's call her Mary or something. I don't think her name's Mary, but he's being accused of quite a serious crime. Now, it's sort of told throughout the story. I don't know if it's ever explicitly said, because I guess it's kind of like the point of the courtroom is to prove whether he's guilty or innocent. But basically the book talks a lot about, you know, racism. You know, that's a very sort of central core tenet, racism, discrimination, and the judgment of it and the social climate, I suppose, in America at the time. I don't know when it was written. I'm going to guess I want to say 70s. That doesn't sound right. Maybe that's, I don't know if that's old enough actually. Maybe it's 1960s. To Kill a Mockingbird. 1960s, okay, yeah. Sorry, let's minimize this Wikipedia. I'll read it after, I suppose, once I think I've got the plot. So yeah, it's basically Boo Radley is being put on trial for being accused of a very serious crime. I don't want to get into too much details because, again, this is Animal Crossing, so I guess we're trying to make it like a. I'm not sure if kid-friendly is the right word, because it's not like kids can't read To Kill a Mockingbird, but I am conscious, I suppose, of, you know, not everyone's expecting an analysis of To Kill a Mockingbird, I suppose, or exposure to that kind of content when clicking on Animal Crossing. So this is why there's so much preamble to this rather than actually talking about what I should be talking about. But yes, okay. So he's being basically put on trial for a thing. He's a black man, so of course, in I think in the south of USA, from what I remember. So of course, you know, racism is quite rampant. Back in the day, you know, it's there's a lot of ingrained racism, I suppose, in these like judicial systems. So Atticus Finch is a defense lawyer trying to defend Boo Radley and get him acquitted, because it's very heavily implied throughout the story that no, Boo Radley did not do the crime he's accused of, but he's being severely taken advantage of by, the racial prejudice that most of like the people have for, his skin color. Which, might I add, not cool. And also from, like, I think he might have had, like, an intellectual disability, but I don't remember if I'm just making that up or not. I'm getting it conflated with a different thing. But it was something like that. And also, like, the victim's father was, like, horribly abusive, from what I recall, and he has, like, some sway, but I think he was like the mayor or the sheriff or something of the town like that. Basically, he had some he had some sway, I suppose, over the jury and the people, because it's like in a small town, that sort of thing. And it's just sort of like told from the perspective of Jem and Scout, I suppose. Is it? I think it's from Scout. I think Jem's a brother. I don't remember if older or younger brother. I think younger brother, but I don't know about Scout. Sort of like interactions with these people and seeing things from her point of view, where she's just like, oh yeah, this guy is like, he's just like kind of a cool dude, and like Atticus coming home and getting frustrated over the inequality and injustice, and I suppose therein lies the irony of it, is this entire thing is meant to be built on the foundations of justice. That's like what the judicial system is for, but how unfair it is at the same time, because it's murked down by people's preconceived notions, and the heart of it, even if it's built on the idea of justice and all that sort of thing, it's still got humans at the foundation of it, and humans and their own terrible biases, I suppose, can still sway the system, right? But it's basically the story of Atticus Finch, who is a great man. Let's get it out there. Atticus Finch, probably one of the greatest of all times in literature history, trying to get Boo Radley off a case. And then spoilers alert, it's like the first trial happens, and then he's not, I think, sentenced to being guilty, but they sentenced to like, I'm not sure if it's a retrial, if that's a proper like lawyer term, but basically there's going to be another trial later. Which is, it was shocking, like at the time. I don't know actually when the book itself is set. If the book itself is set in the 1960s, but it was basically crazy at the time, because everyone was basically like, oh, he's a black man on trial being accused by, like a white powerful family in that town. There's no chance he's going to be sent to jail. But the fact that Atticus Finch somehow was, not even somehow, just like through making people challenge, I suppose, their own beliefs and systems, made the jury not be able to come to a like conclusive decision or something, and it just ends on an incredibly like sad note, I suppose, where it's like before that second retrial happens, which Atticus was like, it's still going to be an uphill battle. Boo Radley like tried to run away, I think, and tried to escape, but then got fatally shot during his escape, and then it's just sort of just like it feels very bleak, I suppose, from what I recall. Again, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because it has been probably over 10 years, like 14 years maybe, since I've read this book, so I don't remember it that well. But I remember reading that, like, wow, check me out, I actually read the books that we were meant to for like English literature for school, and I remember reading that line and just being like no, because it hits pretty hard, just be like, I guess I'm very idealistic, very naive, and especially even more so when at a younger age. Just being like, oh, he can do it, Atticus Finch, he's actually making headway. This is like monumental, I suppose. It's an uphill battle, but he's actually making progress in being able to convince the people that, Boo Radley was innocent. But still he gets, Boo Radley was just like, he's someone who I suppose has been brought up in this system, I suppose, being against him, and has this, just, I suppose, fair but negative outlook on it in general, where it's just like, oh, the real trial's going to happen, that's it, that's basically the equivalent of me being sentenced to being guilty, and he tries to escape because he's like, that's the only way I'm going to be able to live as a free person, and it just doesn't work out. But yeah, I remember, like, as I say, like, English literature, like books you had to read for school vary a lot, I suppose, in quality. Like, we had to read and in Spectacles, I think in year 7, which was, I think in Spectacles was entertaining, but it's obvious because it was like in the 1920s or something. It feels very dated, I suppose, reading it in a sense where it's like, I don't know, and like the humor doesn't quite land quite as right because, we're not in the 1920s, we're in the 2020s, which is weird to say, I suppose, but the cultural identity and I suppose shift makes it, feel like a disconnect rather than it being fully immersive. But it is, I think, quite an engaging story. I suppose it's always interesting to read these stories, which I suppose expose a darker side to humanity, because that one is very much basically like 5 people who decided to take advantage of this girl, unfortunately, through like, through like jealousy or through bitterness or like other things, or just like, hedonism, I suppose, and then just end up ruining her life. And I suppose the family coming to a realization that they're not all that good, I suppose, and how they're all equally kind of to blame about this whole situation. I remember that because I think it was actually quite a good book, it's a screenplay technically, but it's one that sort of like, at the time I was like, this is nice, I do like it, but looking back and reflecting on it, I'm like, there's a lot more to it, which I think is quite good. And then we read To Kill a Mockingbird, which, as I said, is very good. It's sort of like a classic, which maybe I should read again. I don't do a lot of reading, to be perfectly fair, but it's a good book. I don't know where I was going with this. Oh yeah, and then we read Far From a Madding Crowd by, it's like William Hardy or something. That book, I'm going to be honest, wasn't a big fan of it. And the main reason is that book is so wordy. It's so verbose. Like, it takes so long to describe anything in it, and it was just like, I suppose, spoiler alert for Far From a Madding Crowd, I don't even remember what happens mostly in it. I just remember it being very bored by most of it, and then suddenly it just like explodes in the last like 5 chapters, where it's sort of something like, it's kind of like a love triangle from what I recall, but then like one of the lovers gets scorned or something, and then he gets super jealous, and then he just like shoots someone and then like runs away. And I just remember reading it being like, whoa, this is like the first time I've like been super engaged with like this book, while the rest of it has been a bit of a slog. I think it was like 3 people in love with this woman. One is like some high socialite, one of them some like old weird dude, old like kind of creepy guy, and then like this other person just like a humble farmer. And then it's just like the older creepy guy gets jealous for being rejected and shoots a rich, much more, like suave gentleman. And then like that woman, who I think her name is Bathsheba, ends up with the farmer, something like that. I don't know, spoilers. But yeah, we read that. I think that was for GCSE actually. We also read Richard III. Well, we had like a summary of Richard III, which had some pretty like hard lines in the entire play. I'm not gonna lie, like, what's that? I see a dagger before me, I suppose, was actually like a pretty cool speech from what I recall. And then, it has a classic line, a horse, my kingdom for a horse. What else did we read? We read Lord of the Flies, which I thought was good, I remember hating reading it at the time because I got so frustrated at these kids just being like, why are you kids so murderous all the time? But again, reflecting back on it, obviously it's not. I mean, kids are both good and bad, I suppose. I mean, humanity comes in, I suppose, all the shades of colours of morality, from good to bad, I suppose. So it's kind of meant to be a reflection of humanity as a whole and commentary on it. So, that's why it's kind of frustrating, because I guess it's a good thing. I find it frustrating because I like to think I try to be a good person. And even if I'm not like a good person, I'm not like I'm going to go accidentally, spoilers, I guess, for Lord of the Rings, not Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Flies, murder some of my classmates through raw, tribalism, I suppose. But it's a book which I think grew on me. But at the time, I was very frustrated reading it, just being like, why are you so annoying, kids? why are you just like murdering each other or something? Then we read Mr. Pip as well. And Mr. Pip I actually liked a lot. It was not very popular in like my year, but it's basically about this girl who lives on some very remote, I think it's Caribbean island. I don't recall exactly what island, but she lives there, and it's about this teacher called Mr. Watts, I suppose, who introduces her to the world of literature and Charles Dickens, and then like it's basically a Bildungsroman novel. It's basically her growing up and being slowly exposed to things about makeup adult life, like, you know, a tense relationship with her mother as it slowly breaks down because of, you know, well, I suppose tense relations. I think it's also a bit about race, if I recall, as well. And then like a horrible brutality of like war and like it might have been a civil war, I can't remember, that was occurring. And, you know, it doesn't actually have an unhappy ending, but it has an unhappy, like, 5 chapters from the ending, where it's just like, wow, this is just utterly brutal, I suppose. But I remember reading it and being like, yeah, I actually genuinely like this book, I suppose. It's interesting to see the sort of journey this character Matilda goes on. I suppose I was probably around the same sort of age, maybe a bit older than Matilda, I suppose, when I read it. So maybe it's sort of me being like, oh, you know, this is I can glean my own sort of, not information, but life lessons, I suppose, from it in general. So yeah, I don't know, Mr. Put, not that popular in our school. I kind of liked it, I'm going to be honest. But still, To Kill a Mockingbird, to circle back to that, is probably, you know, the GOAT. You know, if I was to rate them, To Kill a Mockingbird at the top, then Mr. Pip, and I know that's personally influenced, but, you know, I liked it a lot. Then I'd probably put in Spectacles, then I'd put Lord of the Flies, and then I'd put Far From Madding Crowd. Oh no, then I put Richard Fred, then I put Far From Madding Crowd. I think we also might have read Romeo and Juliet, but I don't remember. I remember the plot of Romeo and Juliet, I just don't remember if that was during school time or not. But anyway, To Kill a Mockingbird, it's a good book, you know. It's one of Animal Farm. Oh, Animal Farm's also really good. I forgot we read that as well. I'd probably put it above Mr. Pip, to be honest. Animal Farm's really good, from what I recall. Probably my favourite classic book, I suppose. But To Kill a Mockingbird is also really good. But yeah, it's like why this even came up is Off a Book, which is an improvised musical. Basically, you can actually watch that video online. Just search off a book, and there'll just be like some video of it. You know, it's probably called like We Objective Here or something, and you'll see just like 2 people on a stage or something. And they sing about Atticus Finch because it's all about like a mock trial or something. I remember we also like watched To Kill a Mockingbird, like the original movie, I suppose, in English class as well. You know, whenever there's movie times, you're always like, yeah, awesome. But I remember we watched it, you know. And there was a scene, there was a big scene of like proving Boo Radley's innocent, from what I recalled, being like, hey Boo Radley, can you like catch this apple for me or something? And he like, Atticus Finch tosses an apple and he catches it. And then he goes like, now Boo Radley, can you catch it with your other hand? And then Boo Radley goes, I can't. And it's like, why not? It's because it got eaten by like a combine harvester or something when I was like 5. I can't remember the exact story. I also don't remember why it's relevant, but it was somehow, it was basically, you know, that's the point where it's just like beyond like certain, but obviously Boo Radley is innocent. Like if it wasn't obvious enough for all the like commentary, I suppose, the social commentary which is going on throughout To Kill a Mockingbird, it's painfully obvious at that point where it's just like, yeah, obviously this guy's innocent. And I like to think that our life and our world has, I suppose, evolved since that time. I mean, I know it's easy to take a very negative outlook and say like things are worse. I don't know if they're necessarily worse, I suppose, in all things considered, but you know, I suppose the long and short of it is we still, as you know, the world in general has a long way to go, I suppose, before things are what they should be, to be honest. And I'm glad art, you know, like literature and that sort of thing, you know, underappreciated, goes to explore it in that sense. And you might be like, so are you like against these kids reading it in schools and that sort of thing? And I'm like, no, these books are important, I think, for kids to be exposed to this sort of, these ideas, I suppose, from a younger age, to be able to, you know, tackle them and like reflect upon them and see how it reflects society, both like back then from, you know, when the book was written compared to now. You know, it makes them reflect on themselves as a person, being like, you know, am I like someone in this book, like one of the good people or one of the bad people, you know, right? I don't really know where I was going with this. I think that's probably like well established. I think most people are probably like, yeah, kids should read, you know, books in school and that sort of thing. But I'm just like, To Kill a Mockingbird was really good. You know, it's a good book. from what I recall. I mean, maybe it's entirely possible. Like if I read it in modern day, maybe I'll just be like, oh, I hate this. I'm like, oh, it's so heavy-handed, or everything it's talking about, or something, or it's like, oh, it doesn't tackle these topics in a proper way. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but yeah, I don't know. To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird, Animal Farm, Mr. Pip. Those are the 3 ones which I have memories of being like, yeah, I'd read them again. Anyway, I don't really know where I was going with all of this, but there's a sort of like English literature lesson for you. I mean, I know you've probably already had your GCSE exams or whatever, you know, the American equivalents are, SATs. But there you go. Then I guess I didn't really talk about the theme, so if you just regurgitate what I said in this video in your exam, you probably won't get a very high mark. So I would encourage you to, analyse the theme and Harper Lee's language and that sort of thing. Anyway, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares are greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope we see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.